The drama surrounding Rey Perez and Lamont Roach Jr. began long before the first punch was thrown. It began in silence, in the quiet corners of the gym, in the late-night hours when ambition and pain wrestled inside two fighters from different worlds. One, Lamont Roach Jr., carried a heavy weight of expectation and loss. The other, Rey Perez, wore the scars of perseverance, a Filipino warrior searching for redemption in the squared circle. Under the bright lights of the MGM National Harbor, the crowd's murmur turned into a restless hum. The ring gleamed like a stage waiting for history to be written. Every camera flash, every step toward the center, carried a promise that tonight someone's story would change forever. "Touch gloves. Good luck. God bless," said the referee. The fighters obeyed, but the brief moment of civility couldn't hide the storm building between them. For Roach, this wasn't just another bout. It was a test of resolve after a year that had shaken his spirit. Earlier that year, he had lost someone close, a mentor, a friend, a figure whose absence left a void too deep to fill. The ring, once a place of passion, had become an arena of grief and purpose. But tonight, he intended to transform that pain into power. Rey Perez stood across from him, the Mexican colors stitched onto his trunks, a tribute to those who'd helped him in his long, difficult journey. A journeyman fighter with 8 losses, he was no stranger to setbacks. Yet here he was again, chasing the faint light of a comeback, the kind that could redefine a career. For fighters like Perez, every round was a prayer, every punch a plea to be remembered. The bell rang. Round 1 began not with fury, but with calculation. Roach Jr., calm and composed, extended his jab with purpose. Sharp, steady, and deliberate. It wasn't a throwaway jab. It was a message. Each connection was a statement that he was in control. Perez tried to press forward, to break the rhythm, but Roach met him with precision. The crowd sensed it. The young man from Maryland was not just fighting his opponent. He was fighting his own doubts. In Perez's corner, urgency grew. His trainers called for aggression, for movement, for chaos. They knew the only way to beat a boxer like Roach was to drag him into a brawl. But Lamont refused. He stayed patient, focused, slipping punches with the poise of a man who'd studied the art for a lifetime. The first round closed with controlled dominance. Roach's timing sharp, his footwork elegant, his purpose clear. Round 2 brought a different rhythm. Perez, now aware that patience would not win in the fight, started pushing forward. He swung wild hooks, desperate to land something meaningful. Roach, ever the technician, used his legs like a dancer, pivoting, countering, slicing through openings. Every move reflected hours of discipline, years of instruction, and the haunting motivation that came from tragedy. Between rounds, the commentator spoke softly of his loss, of how grief can either destroy or transform a fighter. Roach had chosen transformation. By round 3, the pattern was clear. Perez was brave but outclassed. Still, bravery is a fighter's last weapon, and he wielded it fiercely. He absorbed punches that would have broken lesser men. His face reddened, his body tensed, but his spirit refused to bend. The audience, once leaning toward Roach, now found themselves respecting Perez's courage. Every time he took a hit and came back swinging, he reminded everyone why boxing is called the sweet science, a brutal poetry of endurance and pride. Midway through the fight, Roach began to open up. His jab set traps. His right hand landed like lightning. There was a moment, brief but beautiful, when the entire arena seemed to freeze. Perez stepped forward, left guard slightly low, and Roach caught him flush with short, snapping hook. The sound echoed across the crowd. Perez staggered, not from the pain, but from the precision. Yet somehow he stayed on his feet, nodding as if to say, "I'm still here." That nod told a story in itself. Of heart, of survival, of what it means to fight when there's nothing left but pride. Roach's corner urged patience. They knew Perez was dangerous even in desperation. "Don't trade." Came the voice. "Stay sharp." Roach listened. He wasn't fighting emotionally. He was executing. It was a maturity that separates a good fighter from a great one. Each round, his confidence grew. His footwork danced between aggression and artistry. His punches landed with the crispness of a fighter who had learned not to waste movement. Round 5 was where the tide fully turned. Roach began attacking the body, thudding hooks that broke down Perez's guard. You could see the fatigue setting in. Every breath Perez took seemed heavier, every step slower. But quitting wasn't in his nature. Even when his corner warned him to protect himself, he pushed forward. He'd come too far to retreat now. In the 6th, the commentators compared Roach's rhythm to the greats. His balance reminiscent of Floyd Mayweather's precision, his defense tight, his composure unwavering. Yet, unlike many defensive fighters, Roach wasn't running. He stood his ground, countering with power, controlling the tempo. The MGM crowd began to buzz again, sensing that the home fighter was putting on a masterclass. By round 7, Perez's face told the story. A cut had formed under his eye, sweat mixed with blood, but his gaze remained locked on Roach. He was a warrior in every sense, wounded but unbroken. Roach, perhaps out of respect, didn't go for reckless finishers. He continued the schooling, painting his masterpiece one punch at a time. As the fight moved into the championship rounds, something remarkable happened. The emotion that had driven Roach all year, the grief, the pressure, the weight of expectation, began to lift. You could see it in his movement. He wasn't fighting through pain anymore. He was fighting with peace. The rhythm of his combinations, the timing of his slips, the sharpness of his jab, all came together like a symphony of skill and healing. Perez, despite everything, refused to fade away. He threw looping hooks, tried to corner Roach, even landed a few shots to the body that made the crowd gasp. But Roach remained unshaken. He absorbed, countered, and kept his focus locked. This was more than dominance. It was discipline in motion. The final round arrived with both fighters drenched in sweat, the sound of the bell cutting through the air like the closing note of a long song. Roach knew he had won, but he didn't take victory for granted. He finished strong, snapping the jab, circling left, landing one last clean right hand that punctuated the performance. The bell rang again, and both men dropped their arms. There was a silence before the applause. In that silence lived the respect of two fighters who had given everything to their craft. Perez had lost a fight, but gained admiration. Roach had won, but more importantly, he had found redemption. When the referee lifted Lamont Roach Jr.'s hand, it wasn't just a gesture of victory. It was a symbol of triumph over loss, a control over chaos. For Roach, this fight was personal. Every round had been a chapter in his journey back to himself. For Perez, it was proof that heart can outlast almost anything, even defeat. As they embraced at the center of the ring, sweat mixing with mutual respect, the audience saw not two opponents, but two men bound by the same language, the will to fight on. When the lights dimmed and the crowd began to leave, the ring stood empty again, just another patch of canvas in another arena. But somewhere in that silence, the echoes of their struggle lingered. Because fights like these aren't remembered for knockouts or headlines. They're remembered for what they reveal: courage, resilience, and the fragile beauty of human will. And as the final replay rolled on the screen, Roach's crisp combinations, Perez's unrelenting drive, one question lingered in the minds of those watching. How far would you go to rise again after life hits you hardest? If you enjoyed this story of heart, loss, and redemption inside the ropes, tell us what you think. Was Lamont Roach Jr.'s performance one of discipline or destiny? Could Rey Perez have turned the tide with a different approach? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe in stories where courage meets craft, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more moments that define the fight game.